Good morning, everybody. I am Todd Obert, President and CEO of Productive Corporation, joined alongside me technically, virtually, philosophically, and haircuttedly. We both have similar profiles. To the picture here on the front is Steve Godot, IT Security Specialist. Today, we are going to talk about the next thing in next gen. And we're going to also talk about the current thing in firewalls and UTMs, which is very cool. And it's going to be focused around Sophos technology. We're going to show you why we have found an easier way to combine the technology at your network gateway with your endpoint. Much easier than combining the actual guys, I think. Although we could be willing to try if you gave us the right scalpel and I guess, liability waivers. But that maybe is saved for another webinar. But for today, let's hop right in. And if you've come to our events in the past, you know how we do it. We spend less time talking about fluff and more getting into the meat of the deal. To that end, I am going to talk about Productive in 1 minute or less. Then we will get into our presentation. We're going to talk briefly about, very briefly, about the space. We're going to contrast the Sophos SG UTM versus their new XG Firewall. We'll talk a little bit about the security heartbeat, which is really what that next gen is all about. And finally, but not too far in, really will be the balance of the event. We're going to take a look at the Sophos SG as well as the Sophos XG technology. Steve will show you 3 or 4 things about each that he thinks are pretty cool, and we will go from there. Please utilize the chat feature if you have a question, and we will get it answered straight away. But for now, buckle up. Let's meet Productive Corporation. So, who is Productive, you ask? Well, I'm so glad that you took the time to ask that question. Productive Corporation provides security and storage, software, and services for mid-sized companies. We have a dedicated team that can help with technical expertise, licensing, pre-sales engineering, and get all those questions answered so you don't have to navigate the World Wide Web all by your lonesome. We also implement, test, and optimize the products that we sell. We do everything from security assessments, penetration tests, full VAs, as well as configuration and assistance with the products we sell. Endpoint health check is a big one that we end up doing a lot. We also produce third-party content for the mid-market focused around security and storage. You can find all of this at productivecorp.com/content, as well as Productive Content, which is our YouTube channel. The bottom line is we have the resources to help you, whether it's implementation, assessment, licensing, optimization services. We're here to help. Help at productivecorp.com, 800-726-4099. And one of the ways that we help is by putting on these educational web events. And so today, like you joined, you signed up for it. We're talking about Sophos SG and XG, talking about the new thing in next-gen firewalls and UTMs. So let's get right into it. Let's talk a little bit about what is happening in this environment, right? Well, right now we know currently in this technology space, no big shocker to you guys, right? You got it coming at you from all directions. Not only are you trying to keep everything secure, but you have the end user that when he calls help desk and you say, what kind of computer do you have? He says beige. At the high end, you have the execs, really out there and asking you for more reporting. They might have HIPAA. They might have all sorts of requirements. Maybe there's some PCI reporting you need, other auditing, anything, just even for the accountants. They're coming at you. At the same time, the bad guys are continuing to try to sniff and hit the network, right? They are expanding their types of attacks. They're throwing USB drives in parking lots. So they are, doing social engineering. They're handing out, Starbucks cards to get username and passwords. They are calling into your accounts receivable and talking to somebody in accounts payable, finding out who the accounting people are, getting their email, and then spoofing it and sending it to the CEO or sending it to a business line manager trying to get a check cut. We've featured a bunch of this stuff in our knowledge series. You'll see it. And the types of attacks, or if they're not attacking you directly, they're attacking your vendors and then attacking you, a la Target. They're coming at different ways. And at the same time, everyone in your business is coming at it from a lot of different directions, right? They don't want to just compute at the desktop in their office within your perimeter, right? They want to be mobile. They're walking around with computers in their pockets, right? So that creates an issue at the gateway. And what we've seen, and Sophos as well, is kind of the basic beefs, right? Top complaints about current firewalls, right? Tough to get reporting, right? Insufficient security and control, not the granularity, not easy to get that type of control, right? Which leads to poor value and poor performance. Just, all these things encapsulated together, right? So, Sophos saw this. They're part of the game, right? They had acquired Astaro a number of years ago and said, hey, there's got to be a better way. And they've really been putting their efforts into, creating complete security to simplifying security. And I think this is where they've been on the mark, and really with the SG, when they launched that started it, and they've continued on with the XG. So today we're talking about Sophos SG UTM and XG Firewall. Very cool, both of them. Going to take at a high level what the main differences are, right? Identical hardware, different firmware, different UI, right? SG is out currently, right? It's been out. It's great for those environments that are, right? You already have SG in the environment. You don't need the security heartbeat, meaning you don't need to have the gateway and the endpoint talk together, right? And, or if you need something right now at the gateway, we'd go SG, right? XG came out last month and is very cool with the security heartbeat technology. Really, really cool stuff. I'll show you a little bit how it works on the next slide, and then we'll get into what happens with how those attacks are remediated. And this is really the future, right? These guys are doing it. There's other people in the space that are doing it, but this next gen technology, this is leadership stuff. At the same time, it's brand new. So we think, right, next 60 days, if you're really going that way, right? If you don't have Sophos on the endpoint, it doesn't really matter. And then as you look at adding Sophos on the endpoint, you can migrate to the XG firmware off the SG hardware and kind of pick your time and control it. Otherwise, you go ahead and move with that XG. But very, very cool. And a lot of it, they're coming out. They released it, like I said, about 30 days ago. They're having a major kind of a patch re-rev coming out that's going to take away some of the ticky-tack stuff that's happened right out of the gate, which always happens with brand new technology. So what do we got here, right? XG has the security heartbeat. What does it do, right? Well, it communicates in the background in a very light way between the gateway and all the protocols and everything running on the gateway and everything that's happening on the endpoint, right? It helps accelerate the threats, it helps to isolate the threats, and it helps to remediate more quickly, right? Something gets exposed on the firewall, boom, it's locked down on the gateway. It's locked down on that system. It could take, a second to do it, could take half a second, could take a minute, whatever. Those boxes, that gets quarantined, and it stops it and prevents the bad guys from exfilling data, right? I mean, once there is a breach, it gets locked down much more quickly. You don't have separate stuff happening at the gateway and separate stuff happening at the endpoint. It all works together, right? And I think it really, really is the future of what's going to happen in endpoint security, right? You know, Steve's a historic network guy, right? So he would say it's the future of network computing, and I would say it's the future of endpoint computing, right? But potato, potato, we can still get along. In fact, we're on the same webinar. So you can see here, right, on a lot of this stuff, right? You got everything from application control tying into email security, right, and live protection working with, you know, DLP, right, and ATP detection, right? Sandboxing is coming up, and that's going to be part of the new Rev. And it really, really ties it all together and makes it, you know, it's sophisticated technology delivered in a simple way and in a very clean way. And I think you'll see that when you see the UI and some of the stuff out of the box that happens in the XG. But for now, let's you know, let's hop into it. I think one of you know, when I get feedback here, one of the favorite things that I get feedback from the attendees is, Todd, get off the microphone and let me see Steve Godot present some technology. So that's what we're going to do. As I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, Steve Godot is our IT security specialist. He's worked over on your side of the fence for a lot of years, so he understands the struggle and the pains with keeping a network available and secure. And let's give it up, give a warm virtual round of applause for Mr. Steve Godot. Steve?
Hi, Todd. Hello, virtual brothers out there. Welcome to our webinar today. Well, doing well, thank you very much. And yourself? Did a good job on that presentation. Yeah, enjoyed that.
Yeah, well, let's see what you got.
Let me show you my screen. We're going to start off by showing you the dashboard and talk a little bit here. But before we get started, I just want to make a couple of announcements here briefly. Let's summarize what we should accomplish together with our time. I want to show you the SG series UTM firewall, along with, say, the top 3 popular features that I like, and I'll show you why. But please make a mental note that this device is not in production. Unfortunately, it will not generate any interesting stats for us to look at. I'm sure that you have plenty of that to look at in your own environment. And then we're going to take a look at the dashboard of the Sophos XG series next gen UTM firewall. And there again, I'll show you some of the nice features there that we like. And we'll talk about some of the security initiatives that they've been working on and that they've incorporated into that product. So let's get started here. I believe you can see my screen here. So
absolutely, it looks great. I'm looking at the Sophos UTM, the main screen.
Perfect. That's where we want to start then. So we're looking at this dashboard. Now, in marketing parlance, there are many ways that this is referred to. You've probably seen it in a lot of marketing materials. At a glance, single pane of glass, snapshot, whatever you want to call it. I call it visual management, and I'm going to tell you why. Because like you, I know we all have a few minutes to invest in looking at our network, but we want to get something out of those few minutes. And I like this dashboard because I can look at this dashboard and I can get a lot of relevant information here. Specifically, if I'm in a hurry, just grabbing my first cup of coffee at work, I want to know that my network is clean. There's no errors being reported. There's no panic alarms sounding off. I don't have phone calls coming from my users reporting out, outages and so on and so forth. So I like to look at this and get a good idea of what the health of my network is, and that's why I like this. It's laid out real well. But Todd, did you know that you can customize this interface here? As an example, I can refresh the screen, either set it for never or anywhere from 5 up to 30 seconds or even a minute. The other thing I could do here is, because a lot of what you're seeing on the screen here is modular, I can show what I want to see, what I'm interested in by checking or unchecking. And I can also move these things around on the screen in the columns, up and down. So I get to see what it is that I'm interested in, what's important to me. And now when I look at my screen, I know exactly what I'm looking at without having to peer through it and scroll up and down. So a really cool dashboard, and that's very important to me because, like I say, we don't all have a lot of time to comb through logs looking for false positives and and other anomalies, and try to figure out what some of those cryptic alerts mean. So this visual concept of management and an organized dashboard together, I think, are very important in products, especially today when we're concerned about security. So let's talk about one of the next features that I like, and that's called logging with live logs. Many of you don't find logging very interesting, nor do I. In fact, it's a very mundane topic. But the fact of the matter is there's a lot of good information in those logs. And again, not all of us have the time to comb through those logs. So Sophos incorporates a feature called live logs. And I would show you the list here, but it won't open that list because it's not in production. However, we'll come down here and we'll look at some of the available live logs that we can thew here. So this is a list of other logs. These logs pretty much manage the entire system. And there's 50 logs here to be exact.
So Steve?
Yeah.
So in production, you'll just see, right, if you went to the live logs, you'd go under, say, if I wanted to see high availability or whatever, right? Or if I wanted to see endpoint, I'd go into that and I would just see the events happening as they happen, right?
Yeah, in fact, we might even have just a few that we can show here, like admin notifications. Let's click on a live log and see what it brings up. And in production, of course, you would see a lot of information just scrolling by. So this is some of the stuff it's recording now for admin notifications. But again, this is what we're seeing before it hits the logs and gets recorded. So rather than combing through the logs for this information, I could see it real time as it's occurring. And what we find really useful here in the live logs is especially the firewall piece of it, where we could actually see our policies being implemented and our NAT rules being implemented. So we're looking at traffic coming through the firewall, and we're basically able to determine if our policies are actually blocking or allowing what we do or don't want. So that's really important. And then later on, if we have to go back in time, it's logged. We can view the log. Basically, when you hit the view, what will happen is it'll ask you to download it. And so you can download it, and then you could open it up later on and look at it in more detail. You can also clear the logs from day to day as well. I know people who do that. But some people like to save their information. And speaking of saving information, for those of you out there who do have compliance requirements, we know that 6 months is a long time for some people, but for others it's not long enough. They require to collect data for maybe a year or even longer. And so based on that, Sophos does have a product that you can check out. It's called the iView. And that product allows you to correlate some of the events and store that data for much longer periods of time. And it also accumulates. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to say you can customize across reports, right? Add additional data in and do all sorts of things that are more customized to your need set.
That's correct. That's correct. So yeah, that's the live logs. And Todd, did you know that you could actually search these logs right here on the box? Again, this is a feature that's really valuable. We don't see it in a lot of other products, but essentially I can pick which log that I want to search through here. Again, there's 50 logs. So pertinent to the subsystem you're looking, maybe you're working on VPNs, so you're going to search VPN for a particular IP address or maybe a particular IK parameter. You can pretty much enter that term here and select for what period of time you want to find that information and start the search. And if it's there, it'll pop up. So again, a really nice feature to have on the box for that quick maintenance diagnostic. In terms of reporting, there's a particular report that they generate. They do generate many reports, but there is a particular one that I like called this executive report here, which I'll show you one. But essentially, you can archive these executive reports as well. They're available in a daily, weekly, or monthly format, and you can even generate them in real time. So let's look at one of those reports and see what they contain. So here's one from one of our customers. who was nice enough to supply one for us since we don't have a productive box here. But you can see there's a lot of good information. And again, I look at this thing every day, and I'm pretty much looking at specific areas, looking at numbers. I pretty much have mentally benchmarked my network. I know it's normal. And so as an example, 7.2 gigabit is, gigabytes is a lot of data. But the fact of the matter is, I know that on a daily basis, they're going to be anywhere from 6 to 10. So if I was to all of a sudden one day see maybe double that, I'd be concerned, and I'd have to do a little more digging around to figure out what that traffic consisted of, right? Or maybe I'm looking at the mails process. Maybe I have 5 mailboxes that it should be active. The rest are online, and so when I see a number here like this, I go, what? What's going on? So, again, good information. Use it the way you think you need to use it. Like looking at my resources in a graphical format. Continue down and we can see, a lot of good information. Top 10 clients, top 10 servers, top 10 services. A lot of good information here. I want to know how my users are using the network. As IT people, I think it's important to remember that our duty really is to serve our base of users. As much as we like to dictate the rules, unfortunately, sometimes we get overruled, and then we end up having to do against our will. So rather than go that route, I always take the route of least resistance, like, how can I help you? And I don't always smile, too. You don't have to smile if you don't want to.
Oh, I think you always smile, Steve, no matter what we ask you to do. So, hey, let's slide over and check out that XG, the next gen, and contrast that to this SG, right? So that was the SG we were looking at, right? The reason we don't have that in production is because we have the XG in production here at Productive, but that gives you a pretty good sense of what it is, right? Great technology, comes from that Astaro platform, has that historic kind of feature set built in. Those guys that are, I'd say, legacy Astaro guys have loved that. And but I also think, early days, people love a lot of stuff about this XG. So, Steve, why don't you tell us what you like about the XG?
Well, Todd, as you alluded to earlier, the XG is the next generation. It means it's new, but what happens when something's new? Well, guess what? We got a new dashboard here. And this dashboard is referred to as the Network Security Control Center. And the reason being is because it additionally provides what we've seen in the in their legacy box. However, it also adds on some of their new security features. And one of the things that they've done is they've allowed this area right here to show those three, we call it the trio of security features that they've added, specifically the synchronized heartbeat, the advanced threat protection, and their user threat quotient security information. So this is the area of the screen right here now where you might focus more on, especially when you have the endpoint protection installed. That would be the cloud endpoint, by the way, that ties into the XG through the merit of the synchronized heartbeat. So that marriage of technologies, we consider the vital health link between the UTM and the endpoint. And that is hosted by the Sophos Cloud Console. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at a number and we're looking at a color status. So there's two indicators here that we watch for. So the number 8 tells us how many of our devices have the Cloud Endpoint Agent installed, and 2 that are sitting behind our firewall. So we can see them, we know about them. The green is giving us a health status, saying that we're healthy. There's nothing to worry about. We can move on about our day. So good information. If that turns yellow or red, then we want to know, we want to be alerted, and that's available through notifications as well. The next area is called the advanced threat protection, and again, it's a 2-indicator status. The color green is good. We always like that. And this shield will actually turn to some number in the event of some activity. And typically, if you see activity here, that's indicative of suspicious, malicious traffic found on the network and related to a botnet or CNC activity. That would be command and control activity. Todd, I almost said command and conquer. That was a good game, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, that's okay. If it works, why not?
That's what I hate about acronyms. They get recycled.
Yeah.
Anyways, so the other thing is called the UTQ, or user threat quotient. Now, these things are relatively new to the industry, and for some people, they don't quite get what it's all about. But essentially, Sophos is doing their part in trying to bring features to light that maybe will have some purpose and some usage in some environments where security really is taken seriously. And let's face it, we all recognize how important security is, especially when someone gets breached, somebody close to us, and so then we take it more serious typically. But the fact of the matter is, this is one of those features here that gives us an indication as IT admins who are our risky users. And when we say risky users, it's defined. Sophos has defined that. Basically what they're saying is anybody who's surfing web and not looking at business-related websites is considered at some risk. And depending on what they're surfing, if it's the Tor network, they're going to be rated high. If it's, say, maybe just Facebook or some social network, it'll be rated low, but yet it'll be rated. There's going to be, yeah.
If I'm understanding this correctly, right, I think what I had learned from Sophos is that, right, this thing will remediate it on that box, even if that end user isn't, you know, kind of working in policy, or even if they are working in policy and somehow they're getting infected, you're going to see that, right? So it's easier for IT to go to HR or to say, hey, listen, this will show you how many times this end user's box has been infected, and here's what's happening. Right?
Yes.
And be able to have some real empirical evidence and some real reporting to say, you know, somebody, this guy's manager or HR, somebody's got to talk to this person or this group because they are creating security vulnerabilities. They're making it vulnerable.
Correct. Yes. Good points, Todd. Very good points. Yes, these are self-remediating features here, and so in the event that something does look like there's trouble, it's really informing you as the admin when you look at this screen that, hey, something happened, here's what it was, we've remediated it, and life is good again. And because these will turn yellow or red, depending on how severe, critical, you'll be able to select them like a hyperlink, and it will take you to the necessary logs for that pertinent information. So you'll know as an administrator what happened, where it happened, to who it happened, and you'll not only get an IP address, but you also get a username too if you use the authentication features of the box. So,
hey, Steve,
yeah.
Can you quickly get into some of that reporting and diagnostics on this, as we got probably about 2-3 minutes left?
Oh, no.
Before we're down
Sorry, guys.
half of the hour. Yeah, that's all right.
Okay. I get so excited talking about the box, I forget where I'm at.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Let's talk about the richness in their reporting. So here's the reporting menu right here, and as you can see, they've categorized their reports. And we've had some people mention the compliance reports are very helpful. They're gathering specific information, and you'll notice as I select any one of these reports here that I'm getting this information as to what they're gathering, what they're going to report on in this report, and this report can be emailed to anybody in the organization as well.
And show them like on, Steve, on like PCI. Click on that report and we'll talk a little bit. Yeah. I mean, this will show you, right, it'll take a little bit of time to populate here, but, you know, this isn't saying all of a sudden this report is PCI, makes you PCI compliant. It's just the stuff in your technology that we believe auditors are going to ask for, and Sophos believes that, so it makes it, it should simplify and streamline that process for you. And that's really all that's trying to do, is trying to help you speed up that process. By no means is this saying, oh, because I run this report, I'm PCI compliant. It just talks about data that you may need for an auditor, something you can show them, hey, here's what we're doing. This will give you the kind of idea of the type of security we're using, and that sort of thing. So I think it's definitely very helpful and very thoughtful on Sophos' part to include that stuff right out of the box.
Yes. And Todd, you know what? You can download these as HTML, PDF, or Excel, or you can bookmark them, or you can schedule your deliveries. So again, more nice features there.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I wanted to point out too was in the policies. Another thing that they've done here is they've given us our own policy menu. No longer do I have to search through the box from top to bottom, looking at my firewall policies, my web filtering policies, my mail policies. I come to one area, and now I have all of my policies here. And again, they try to lay them out in such a way where I can look at them and tell what they do. However, if I click on any one of them, I got some plain English here for those folks who really want to know specifically what is this filter doing without having to analyze it. So again, nice features. And another thing about these firewall policies is that they tie into the heartbeat. So I can make these policies contingent on having a green heartbeat. So if I have end users that have a yellow or red heartbeat, guess what's going to happen? Depending on how I configure this, I'm going to probably block them.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So, right, problem users, they just get it automatically locks them down from a policy standpoint if they're not a green heartbeat.
That's correct. Yeah, in fact, if you can see right here, we're using this feature right here. We have an attack demo, so if anybody needs to see it in action, we can actually demo that. But as an example, I'll show you real quickly. But in one of these policies here, if you scroll down at the bottom, you can see where the contingency of the heartbeat is. So I'm going to either require a heartbeat or not, and if I require a heartbeat, I can say what is the minimum permit, is it green or yellow, or just a no restriction, just to have a heartbeat. So there you go. Every policy has that capability. Plus every policy here can also be user-directed. So not just network-related IP addresses and ports and protocols, but now it's also user-based. So if I want to policy a particular user or a group of users, guests, I can do that.
Wow.
Again, I like these features. These are nice features to have, and it's why we like this next-gen firewall. It has a lot of good purpose. So.
Yep. Anything you want to say on diagnostics before I take back control?
They've added some interesting features in their diagnostics on board. As an example, packet capture. Typically, you'd have to go into some sort of an extensive debug, which, by the way, there is a console to this that is available through this menu that I can do that. However, I can also do packet capture here within the interface. Nice feature, very valuable, and it'll go a long ways to troubleshooting from one box, one tool, one interface.
Oh, cool.
So that's what excites me these days, Todd.
Yeah, well, it's fairly exciting. I mean, and I'm a classic endpoint guy, and I'm fairly excited. So,
well, that's great.
That's great stuff. Steve, thank you so much. That was a really thoughtful and informative look at the SG and XG technology from Sophos. Thanks, everybody, for taking a half hour out of your day. We know you have a lot going on, so the fact that you chose to spend 30 minutes with us is not lost on us. Thank you. Your account exec's going to follow up, see what you need. There's a lot of stuff in here. Happy to do a custom demo. Happy to answer more specific technical questions about how you would configure, what kind of reporting you'd want, how it would look, anything to that end, whether right now SG or XG is most appropriate for your environment, all of that stuff. In the meantime, I want to say or wish that you have a fantastic balance of your day and week, and hopefully we'll talk soon. Thanks, everybody.